Humanity stayed silent for centuries. The Galactic Council thought they were weak. But when the Titan awakened, the galaxy trembled. Witness the moment arrogance meets unstoppable power. Don't miss this epic twist. Hit subscribe now for more. For centuries, humanity existed quietly on the edge of the galactic stage, barely noticed by the great empires that ruled the stars. Their ships were small, their trade routes limited, and their presence in interstellar politics almost non-existent. To the Galactic Council, humans were just another young species that had recently learned faster-than-light travel. Nothing about them seemed dangerous or important. They did not demand territory. They did not interfere in ancient conflicts, and they rarely sent representatives to major assemblies. This silence made the Council comfortable, and comfort quickly turned into contempt. Council analysts studied humanity through distant probes and intercepted signals. They saw fragmented governments, constant debates, and a species that argued more than it fought. Human worlds appeared lightly defended, with no massive fleets guarding their borders. Their technology was advanced enough to survive, but nothing that challenged the ancient powers. Reports described humans as emotional, divided, and cautious, a species that preferred survival over dominance. These findings confirmed what the Council already believed: humanity was harmless. Because of this belief, humans were left alone while stronger empires expanded. Systems fell, alliances broke, and wars reshaped the galaxy, yet humanity remained silent. They did not take advantage of chaos, nor did they offer help or resistance. From the Council's view, this proved humans lacked ambition. A truly powerful species would have seized the moment. But humans stayed in their space, building quietly, watching, learning, and waiting. Over time, some Council members began to question this strange behavior. They wondered why a species capable of interstellar travel showed no desire to rule or influence others. A few suggested caution, reminding the Council that silence could hide preparation. But these voices were drowned out by arrogance. The dominant empires had ruled for thousands of years. They believed no newcomer could threaten their position, especially not one as quiet as humanity. When humanity finally requested formal first contact, the Council laughed at the idea. To them, this was not a historic moment, but a routine procedure, a minor species asking for recognition and protection. The Council approved the meeting quickly, assigning low-priority diplomats and observers. They expected gratitude, submission, and perhaps a few trade agreements that benefited the stronger powers. No one prepared for danger, because no one believed danger existed. Humanity's silence before first contact was misunderstood. The Council assumed humans stayed quiet because they were afraid. They believed humans had watched galactic wars and chosen obedience over resistance. What the Council failed to understand was that humans had learned a very different lesson. From their own violent history, humans knew that power revealed too early invited endless conflict. They had learned that survival sometimes meant staying unseen. While the Council dismissed them, humanity studied everything: alien tactics, political manipulation, energy weapons, and the rise and fall of empires. They recorded every mistake made by the great powers and ensured they would never repeat them. Their silence was not emptiness, it was discipline. Behind calm worlds and modest fleets, humanity built defenses far beyond what scanners could detect, not for conquest, but for survival. To humanity, the galaxy was dangerous, not because of monsters, but because of pride. They saw how powerful empires crushed weaker species simply to prove dominance. Humans promised themselves they would never become victims again, nor would they become tyrants. Their goal was simple: endure, protect their people, and remain unseen until absolutely necessary. As the date of first contact approached, human leaders were calm. They knew the Council saw them as insignificant, and they allowed that belief to stand. No threats were issued, no power was shown. Humanity chose words instead of weapons. Trusting that respect could still exist in the galaxy, they did not know yet that this calm choice would be mistaken for weakness. The silent species entered the galactic stage not with noise, but with restraint. And in that restraint, the Council failed to see the warning hidden in humanity's quiet presence. Silence does not always mean helplessness. Sometimes it is the sound of power waiting to be tested. The Galactic Council gathered with absolute confidence as the day of humanity's first official appearance arrived. The chamber was filled with ancient beings who had ruled the stars for generations. Their empires had stretched across thousands of systems, and each representative carried the weight of countless conquered worlds. To them, this meeting was not historic. It was routine, another minor species stepping into a galaxy that already belonged to others. Laughter echoed softly through private channels as humanity's name appeared on the agenda. Some council members shared old memories of first contact with weaker races, remembering how fear had filled those chambers. They expected the same now, bowed heads, nervous voices, and eager promises of loyalty. Humanity was discussed not as an equal, but as a problem to be managed. Council strategists reviewed data screens showing human territory, small clusters of systems, limited fleets, no massive war formations, no signs of ambition, no aggressive expansion. This information only strengthened their belief that humans would accept whatever conditions were placed upon them. Trade restrictions, military oversight, and political limitations were already drafted before the meeting even began. Powerful empires argued over who would benefit most from humanity's admission. Some wanted access to human resources, others wanted labor agreements. A few suggested placing defensive limits to ensure humans never developed weapons that could threaten galactic balance. The idea that humanity might already possess such power was never seriously considered. The Council believed dominance was permanent. They had crushed rebellions, erased civilizations, and rewritten galactic law whenever it suited them. Their fleets were legendary, their weapons feared, and their authority unquestioned. A quiet species like humanity could not possibly challenge centuries of rule. This belief had hardened into arrogance over time. As the meeting time approached, diplomats prepared speeches filled with polite superiority. They planned to speak slowly, clearly, and firmly, explaining the galaxy's rules as one would explain dangers to a child. Humanity would be warned not to interfere in major conflicts, advised to remain within assigned borders, and encouraged to contribute economically under Council supervision. In return, they would receive protection, or at least the illusion of it. Some junior observers felt a strange tension in the air. They noticed how calm the human request for contact had been. No desperation, no pleading, just a formal request sent through official channels. A few whispered concerns reached the upper tiers, but they were dismissed quickly. Confidence left no room for doubt. The Council saw themselves as guardians of order, even though their order was built on fear. They believed peace was maintained through strength alone. Any species that lacked visible power was automatically considered weak. Humanity's lack of displays, parades, or threats only reinforced this judgment. Silence was interpreted as submission. Behind closed doors, a vote was already planned. Humanity would be placed under observation. Their military development monitored. Their expansion limited. This was not seen as cruelty, but as necessity. The Council convinced itself that control was kindness and dominance was stability. When the chamber doors finally opened, the Council members took their seats with relaxed posture. Some barely paid attention, reviewing other matters while waiting for the humans to appear. They had no fear, no urgency, and no preparation for resistance. Their confidence was so complete that even the possibility of failure felt impossible. What none of them realized was that confidence without understanding is fragile. The Council mistook age for wisdom, power for permanence, and silence for surrender. Their certainty blinded them to warning signs they did not believe mattered. Humanity was walking into that chamber carrying centuries of restraint, while the Council sat comfortably atop centuries of unchecked pride. In that moment, before a single word was spoken, the balance of the galaxy was already shifting. The Council just did not know it yet. Humanity entered the Council chamber without hesitation. The human delegates walked forward calmly, their movements steady and controlled. They did not bow deeply, nor did they show defiance. Their posture reflected confidence without arrogance. This unexpected calm immediately unsettled several Council members who had expected nervous glances and careful obedience. The human spokesperson began to speak in a clear and even tone. There was no trembling in the voice, no rushed words, only measured sentences that showed careful thought. Humans thanked the Council for allowing the meeting, but they did not express gratitude in a submissive way. Instead, their words sounded equal, as if they were speaking to partners rather than rulers. This tone created discomfort across the chamber. Council representatives exchanged silent looks, wondering why a so-called weak species showed no fear. The humans listened patiently as rules and expectations were explained. They did not interrupt, but when it was their turn to respond, they declined several demands without raising their voice. They stated boundaries calmly, explaining that humanity valued independence and mutual respect. The refusal shocked the Council. Species far stronger than humans had accepted harsher conditions without question, yet here stood a quiet species, politely but firmly saying no. The humans did not threaten retaliation, nor did they boast about hidden power. Their strength came from certainty, and that certainty was deeply unsettling. Council officials pressed harder, warning humans about the dangers of isolation and the consequences of non-compliance. Still, the human delegates remained calm. They acknowledged the risks, but made it clear they had already considered them. This response raised new questions among observers. What kind of species plans for consequences before they even appear? As the discussion continued, it became clear that humans had studied the Council carefully. They referenced past conflicts, failed treaties, and broken promises without accusation. Their knowledge of galactic history surprised many in the chamber. Humanity spoke as observers who had watched from a distance, learning lessons without participating. Some council members began to feel uneasy. Confidence usually came from power, but humans showed no visible signs of military strength. No fleet displays, no threats, no technological demonstrations. Yet they spoke with the assurance of a species that was prepared. This contradiction made several representatives uncomfortable. The humans also spoke about peace, but not as beggars seeking protection. They described peace as a choice made by strong civilizations, not a gift given by rulers. This statement caused quiet tension. It challenged the Council's belief that peace was enforced only by dominance. As negotiations continued, the Council realized that intimidation was not working. Humans did not argue emotionally, nor did they respond to pressure. They simply repeated their position calmly, mutual respect or no agreement. This patience was mistaken by some as stubbornness, but others began to sense something deeper. Behind the calm expressions of the human delegates was discipline built over generations. They had learned that emotional reactions revealed weakness. Silence and control were shields. Every word spoken in the chamber was deliberate. Nothing was accidental. The Council had expected a one-sided discussion. Instead, they faced a mirror reflecting their own arrogance. Humanity did not accuse, but their calm refusal exposed the imbalance of respect in the chamber. This made some council members angry, others confused, a few quietly concerned. When the session paused, whispers spread across the chamber. Who were these humans really? Why did they behave like equals when they clearly lacked visible power? No answers appeared on the data screens. No secret fleets detected. No unusual energy signatures found. Humanity's calm response planted doubt where certainty once ruled. The Council had prepared to dominate, not to negotiate. And in that moment, many realized they were unprepared for a species that refused to be intimidated. The humans left the chamber with the same calm presence they had entered with, leaving behind a council that felt something unfamiliar. Unease. Because for the first time in centuries, silence did not feel weak. It felt controlled, deliberate, and dangerous. The council chamber buzzed with quiet irritation after the humans left. What was supposed to be a simple meeting had turned into an unexpected challenge to authority. Several representatives felt insulted by humanity's calm refusals. To them, respect was something demanded, not requested. And the idea that a minor species could say no without consequences felt unacceptable. Discussions quickly shifted from diplomacy to discipline. Senior council members argued that allowing humanity to refuse demands would set a dangerous example. If one small species could resist without punishment, others might follow. The balance of power that kept the galaxy under control depended on fear and obedience. Humanity's calm behavior threatened that system. Some voices urged patience, reminding the council that humans had not acted aggressively. They suggested further talks, observation, and limited engagement. But these voices were weak and easily ignored. Arrogance spoke louder than caution. The dominant empires believed hesitation was weakness, and weakness invited rebellion. The council convinced itself that humanity's confidence was an act, a bluff meant to hide fear. They believed humans had overestimated their importance. A short and controlled display of force, they argued, would remind humanity of its place. No war was planned, just a demonstration. Enough to frighten, not enough to destroy. A formal message was sent to human leadership. It was framed politely, but the meaning was clear. Accept council authority or face consequences. Alongside the message came a warning. A council fleet would be sent near a human border system to conduct military exercises. Officially, it was routine. Unofficially, it was a threat. When the humans replied, their response was brief and calm. They advised the council to reconsider. They warned that aggressive actions, even symbolic ones, could lead to outcomes neither side wanted. There were no threats, no dramatic language, just a quiet request for restraint. The council laughed at this response. To them, it confirmed their belief that humanity was nervous, trying to delay the inevitable. They interpreted the warning as fear hidden behind polite words. The decision was made quickly after that. The demonstration would proceed. Fleets were mobilized. Massive warships from multiple empires gathered. Their commanders felt no fear. They expected no resistance. The plan was simple. Enter the human border system, show overwhelming force, and withdraw. Humanity would learn its lesson, and the Council's authority would be restored. As preparations continued, no one noticed how humans reacted. There were no emergency broadcasts, no frantic messages. Human space remained calm. Civilian traffic continued as normal. There were no visible military movements. This lack of response only reinforced the Council's confidence. Behind the scenes, some junior analysts felt uneasy. They reviewed the humans' earlier words again. Not the warning itself, but the tone. There was no panic in it, no urgency. It sounded like advice given to someone about to make a mistake. This subtle detail disturbed them, but their concerns never reached those in power. The Council fleet entered human space without resistance. Sensors detected no hostile activity, no defense platforms activated, no fleets approached. The commanders relaxed, certain now that humanity had no real strength. Then something unexpected happened. Long-range sensors began to register anomalies. Not weapons fire, not ships, just massive distortions in space itself. At first, they assumed it was a sensor error, but the readings grew stronger, deeper, and impossible to ignore. Confusion spread across command channels. Orders were repeated, systems recalibrated. Still, the distortions remained. The human worlds remained silent. No communication, no threats, just the quiet presence of something unseen. The Council had ignored the warning, believing it meant weakness. They failed to understand that restraint can exist alongside power. Humanity had not warned out of fear, but out of choice. A final opportunity for peace had been offered and dismissed. As the fleet advanced further, confidence began to crack. Officers exchanged nervous glances. For the first time since entering human space, uncertainty replaced arrogance. The Council had wanted to teach a lesson, but instead, they were stepping into one. The quiet warning had been ignored, and the consequences were already moving toward them, unseen, unstoppable, and far beyond anything the Council had prepared for. The Council fleet moved deeper into the human border system with growing unease. Space around them felt heavy, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. Sensors screamed with warnings that made no sense. Readings showed massive energy fluctuations far beyond anything known. Yet no ships appeared on visual scans. The commanders tried to maintain order, convincing themselves this was just an unknown human trick or a natural anomaly. Then space began to change. Not explode, not tear violently, but bend slowly, like reality was being pushed aside by something enormous. A shadow appeared where there should have been stars. At first it looked like a dark cloud, but it kept growing, expanding until entire star fields vanished behind it. Silence filled every command channel. What emerged was not a fleet, it was a single structure, so large that scale lost meaning. The object did not arrive through hyperspace. It seemed to unfold from space itself, layer by layer, revealing an ancient machine that dwarfed planets. Hull plates stretched like continents, glowing faintly with symbols older than recorded galactic history. Panic spread instantly. Officers froze. Commanders shouted orders that no one could process. Weapon systems locked automatically, then failed. Targeting computers could not define the object's boundaries because the Titan was too vast to be treated as a single target. The machine did not attack. It did not charge weapons or send threats. It simply existed, hanging silently between the Council fleet and human space. That silence was terrifying, because nothing so powerful should be so calm. Council databases scrambled to identify it. Ancient legends, forbidden archives, and erased records surfaced at once. Some empires recognized fragments of myth, stories of guardians built by a forgotten species, weapons meant not to conquer, but to end wars before they began. Most had believed those stories were symbolic, not real. The Titan slowly powered up, not with noise but with light. Massive lines across its surface began to glow. Energy readings spiked beyond measurable limits. Yet still, no weapons fired. Instead, invisible waves spread outward, passing through the Council fleet like a quiet breath. In an instant, ships began to fail. Not explode, not break apart, just shut down. Engines died, weapons went dark, shields collapsed without resistance. Entire armadas were reduced to silent metal drifting helplessly in space. No crew members were harmed, no life signs lost. The precision was frightening. Commanders tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. Jump drives refused to engage. Communication systems barely functioned. The Titan had not trapped them physically. It had simply made escape meaningless. Then a signal came through, clear, calm, unmistakably human. The voice did not boast or threaten. It explained. This construct was a defensive guardian, built long before humanity joined the galactic community, activated only when extinction-level threats approached human space. The Council fleet had crossed that threshold. The message continued. Humanity had remained silent not because it was weak, but because it understood what revealing such power would do to the galaxy. Fear breeds escalation. Escalation leads to annihilation. The Titan existed to prevent that future. As the Council listened, shame mixed with terror. This was not a weapon of conquest. It was a shield so powerful that war became impossible near it. The realization struck hard. Humanity could have dominated the galaxy if it wished. Instead, it chose restraint. The Titan adjusted its position slightly, blocking the path to human worlds completely. It did not advance, it did not retreat, it waited, a silent question hanging in space. Council leaders finally understood the warning they had ignored. This was not a bluff, not a secret fleet hidden in shadows. This was a single guardian meant to end conflicts before they began, and the humans had many more. In that moment, arrogance collapsed. Centuries of assumed dominance shattered under the presence of something that could disable empires without killing a single being. The Council had wanted to teach humanity a lesson. Instead, they had witnessed the awakening of a Titan, and the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. The Titan hung in space, massive and calm. Its presence alone reshaped the Council fleet's understanding of power. Commanders tried to comprehend the scale of what they faced. Weapons, once considered invincible, were now useless. Every calculation, every tactical strategy failed against this single machine. The Titan moved with precision, not chaos, shutting down engines, disabling shields, and neutralizing fleets without destroying a single life. Sensors that measured energy output went beyond limits, showing levels previously thought impossible. Council scientists scrambled to interpret the readings, but the physics alone were beyond their understanding. Gravity, energy, and matter seemed to follow rules different from those known in the galaxy. Every ship that attempted to resist was rendered ineffective, as if the Titan could predict every move before it happened. The human message continued, explaining that the Titan was only the first of many guardians, each built with different capabilities, each designed to protect, not to conquer. Humanity's strategy had always been defensive, not because they lacked the ability to dominate, but because they had learned the cost of unchecked power. They had seen empires rise and fall, entire species wiped out, and they refused to repeat those mistakes. Council members struggled to understand. Their arrogance had taught them that strength is shown through attack, through conquest, through overwhelming display. But here was a species that demonstrated strength by restraint, that ended a war before it could start, and rendered fleets useless without firing a single shot. This was a lesson they had never learned. Some observers tried to argue for retreat, but even that was complicated. The Titan's influence extended far beyond visible sensors. It disrupted energy systems, navigation, and communication. Fleets could not coordinate, ships could not flee. Even the fastest vessels became trapped in a space controlled by the machine's presence. As hours passed, the Council realized that negotiation was now meaningless. Traditional diplomacy relied on fear, threats, and leverage, but humanity had made leverage absolute. They did not negotiate. They simply existed as a force beyond comparison. The Council's previous calculations of risk, power, and authority had all been rendered obsolete. From the human perspective, this was not war. It was a demonstration, a quiet reminder that the galaxy was not theirs to command. Humans had chosen silence for centuries, waiting, observing, preparing. They understood that most empires believed in immediate dominance, that weakness invited attack, and that caution was often ignored. The Titans' movements were deliberate, not destructive. It created an invisible barrier, preventing any aggressive action. Its presence alone forced fleets to comply, without a single weapon discharged, without loss of life. It was the ultimate display of control and restraint, a paradox that confounded the Council. Council members debated in desperation. They tried to interpret humanity's intentions. Some insisted that humans would eventually strike. Others realized that restraint was a deliberate choice. That power was meant to prevent war, not escalate it. The realization brought fear and awe in equal measure. Messages continued from human command, explaining that these guardians were ancient, created before most empires existed. They were built to endure, to act decisively, and to protect. Humanity had preserved them, not for glory, not for revenge, but to ensure survival and balance in the galaxy. The Council's arrogance began to crumble, confidence replaced by uncertainty. Commanders who had never faced defeat now questioned every decision, every fleet deployment, every strategy, every alliance. The humans had changed the rules of engagement without lifting a weapon. As the Titan adjusted its position slightly, it communicated a silent truth. Strength is measured not by how much you can destroy, but by how much you can prevent destruction. Humanity's hidden might was unstoppable, yet merciful. It was not there to conquer, but to show the cost of misjudgment. For the first time, the Council realized that they had underestimated the wrong species, that centuries of dominance meant nothing against discipline, foresight, and controlled power. The galaxy had seen machines before, but never machines that embodied wisdom as power, never machines used to enforce peace with absolute certainty. And in that moment, the Council understood. Humanity's guardians were more than weapons. They were statements, declarations that the galaxy's quiet species could be more dangerous than any empire, not because of aggression, but because of unmatched preparation and restraint. The lesson was clear. Underestimate humanity at your own peril. The Council had never experienced such overwhelming shock. What had begun as a simple display of authority had turned into a lesson they could barely comprehend. Commanders, diplomats, and scientists all struggled to accept what they were witnessing. Humanity had not only survived the Council's scrutiny, but they had revealed a force so vast that no empire could hope to match it directly. Panic spread quietly among the ranks. Not open chaos, but a deep, vast, creeping fear that grew with each moment. Leaders who had never doubted themselves began to question every assumption, every alliance, every strategy, every plan that had ever worked before now seemed meaningless. The centuries of confidence that had guided the Council suddenly felt like hubris. Observers and junior officials whispered among themselves, trying to understand the calmness of the humans. How could a species with no visible armada, no overwhelming fleet, no obvious technological superiority command such control over the situation? The answer slowly became clear. Humans had never revealed their full power because they had no need to. They had prepared for this moment for centuries, quietly, patiently, deliberately. The Council fleet remained frozen in space, immobilized by the Titan's presence. Its silent power was enough to enforce obedience. Every attempt to resist or maneuver proved futile. Humans had created not just machines, but absolute deterrence, systems that rendered traditional warfare meaningless. Without a single shot fired, humanity had changed the rules of engagement in the galaxy. Messages from human command arrived, calm, formal, and deliberate. They explained that the Titan's activation was necessary because the Council had ignored previous warnings. Humanity did not seek revenge, nor did they wish to dominate. But they would defend themselves and their people with overwhelming force if necessary. The Council had misinterpreted silence as weakness, and now they faced the consequences. Council leaders convened in emergency sessions, trying to find a solution. Some argued for immediate retreat, but even that was complicated by the Titan's control over space. Others suggested negotiation. But traditional diplomacy seemed irrelevant against a species whose power could render entire fleets useless. Fear and confusion replaced arrogance, and for the first time, centuries of assumed dominance seemed fragile. As hours passed, the realization became unavoidable. Humanity had never been unprepared. They had watched, learned, and built defenses far beyond what the Council had imagined. What the empires considered ignorance was actually strategy. What they saw as weakness was patience, and what they assumed was simplicity hid centuries of careful planning and foresight. The Council tried to communicate, seeking reassurance or clarification, but the human responses were simple and calm, explaining that restraint was chosen deliberately, not out of fear, but out of principle. Humanity had the power to crush, yet they chose not to. They offered peace and understanding instead, leaving the Council to confront its own arrogance. For many, the lesson was humbling. Entire fleets, countless years of political dominance, and accumulated technological knowledge were nothing compared to disciplined preparation. The Council had assumed the galaxy was theirs because they had power and experience. But power without wisdom could be meaningless, and arrogance could be fatal. Humanity did not gloat, did not demand surrender. They did not seek to humiliate or punish. Instead, they simply withdrew slightly, maintaining control while giving the Council space to reflect. Their message was clear. Respect comes from understanding, from preparation, and from knowing when to act, not from domination or fear. As the Council processed the situation, officers and diplomats quietly acknowledged the truth. Humanity had changed the balance of power forever. They had demonstrated that even the quietest species, underestimated by history, could wield absolute influence through discipline and foresight. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. In that moment, the Council realized that first impressions could be deceiving, that silence did not equal weakness, and patience did not equal submission. Humanity had shown that true strength was measured not by the destruction one could cause, but by the ability to control, to endure, and to choose restraint even when overwhelming power was available. And as the Titan hovered silently in human space, the Council understood a simple, undeniable truth. They had been unprepared, overconfident, and blind, and for the first time in their history, they had met a force they could not dominate. Only respect, only careful understanding, and only acknowledgement of humanity's hidden might could prevent disaster. Humanity slowly withdrew the Titan, allowing the Council fleets to regain partial control of their systems. The machine's presence had been enough to enforce respect without a single casualty. Its silence now spoke louder than any weapon. The Council breathed cautiously, realizing that the humans had not sought to punish, only to protect. Council members, once filled with arrogance, now faced the weight of their misjudgment. Every empire realized that centuries of dominance and assumed superiority had blinded them to the quiet power of a patient species. Humans had shown that true strength lay not in conquest, but in preparation, restraint, and understanding. As human diplomats addressed the Council again, their tone was firm yet calm. They offered terms of peace built on equality, not submission. The humans explained that they did not wish to dominate the galaxy, only to ensure that no species would be destroyed through ignorance or overconfidence. Their message was clear. Respect was earned, not demanded, and power without wisdom could be catastrophic. The Council deliberated in silence, realizing how close they had come to disaster. Their fleets had been immobilized, their weapons useless, and their centuries of authority rendered meaningless. Yet humanity had given them a chance to learn, to acknowledge mistakes, and to rebuild relations on a foundation of mutual respect. As negotiations continued, the Council gradually accepted new terms. Restrictions and oversight were replaced with cooperative agreements, trade deals became fairer, and joint defense plans were proposed. Humans did not push for dominance. They simply insisted that they be treated as equals. And for the first time, centuries of galactic diplomacy were redefined by a species once considered insignificant. The fleet slowly withdrew from human border systems. The Titan remained in orbit temporarily, a silent guardian ensuring that no sudden aggression could occur. Council officers who had initially laughed at humanity now studied their strategies and defensive systems. They realized that every action had been deliberate, every restraint purposeful. The humans had prepared for centuries, not for war, but for survival and balance. Across the galaxy, reports of the encounter spread. Other species began to rethink assumptions about humans. Quiet observers underestimated had shown that discipline, intelligence, and foresight could outweigh raw power. Stories of the Titan and humanity's calm yet decisive approach became lessons in strategy and humility. The Council had faced a nightmare, not because humanity was violent, but because humanity was wise, prepared, and patient. Even within human society, there was no celebration of victory, only a quiet understanding that restraint had prevented unnecessary destruction. Leaders knew that demonstrating overwhelming force could escalate conflict, but allowing the Council to recognize their mistake ensured long-term stability. Humanity's approach had been deliberate, teaching a lesson without causing suffering. As the final agreements were signed, the Council formally acknowledged humanity's status. Respect replaced arrogance. Diplomacy replaced threats. The galaxy had learned that power alone was not enough. That intelligence, patience, and preparation could turn even a seemingly weak species into a force beyond reckoning. Human diplomats departed, leaving the Council to reflect on the encounter. Silence returned to the chamber, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with the weight of understanding. The realization that underestimating humanity had been a mistake that could have cost entire civilizations. For the first time, the Council faced a species that had risen from the shadows to demand respect not through war, but through wisdom. Its lesson would echo across generations, teaching that true power was measured not by domination, but by the ability to protect, to restrain, and to act decisively when necessary. The galaxy slowly adjusted to this new reality. Humans became partners, advisors, and equals. Their reputation transformed from quiet observers to guardians of balance. Empires reconsidered their assumptions about strength, and the Council never underestimated the silent species again. And in that moment, First Contact ended not with violence or conquest, but with a profound lesson. Humanity had shown that restraint could be more powerful than war, patience more decisive than arrogance, and preparation more formidable than fleets. The Council had faced a nightmare not of aggression, but of wisdom, and it changed the course of the galaxy forever.